All right, guys, we're going to open up the board gaming archive here. We're going to reach out into the community, and I'm going to ask the question, followed by giving my answer, and then we're going to turn it over to your answers in the comments right now. Board games that are publicly available. So we're going to push any out-of-print titles out of the equation for the moment. What board game do you feel has the most value? Putting down the money to acquire it versus a number of factors that are really going to spawn multiple plays, but really dollar for dollar value. Board gaming right now. So some of the considerations, the matrix here that I'm looking at to come up with my vote, and it is going to be a little bit biased. It's going to be a little bit modified because I love primarily sci-fi board games. I love fantasy board games. I love board games with dungeon quests and magic. I have a couple of Euro titles in my collection. I enjoy playing some Euros with friends, but certainly that's not the focus of my collection. So definitely in the comments, we could pull in and apply. So the first is production quality. In terms of miniatures, if utilized, cards, dice, components, not only in the quality of the cardboard, literally, thick, nice cards, thick, nice boards versus paper-thin fold-out sheets and maps, but also the visuals and the materials utilized. Does it give a nice presentation? Does it evoke kind of the narrative in there? Does it all tie together really, really well? And the fact that we're playing analog, literally analog on there, does it tie in as you manipulate the components? So that's the first consideration that I look at. Second, I want to look at replayability. And now this is like a big thing, right? Replayability. How many times are you going to play a board game? Honestly, with some of the titles in your collection, how many times have you played them? Let's put price aside for a moment. You acquire a board game. If you get 10, 15, 20 plays out of it, 100 plays out of it, where is that line? Of course, cost influences it a little bit, where you say, look, I got a number of plays out of it. I define replayability as something new every time. So every board game is going to have, 10, 15 scenarios. The first time you encounter those scenarios or the set scenarios, it's going to be new. It's going to be exciting. But I define replayability also as taking the same scenarios and being able to explore them from different angles, different character levels, different character classes, different types of equipment, maybe different narratives leading into it. So even though it's not fresh and brand new, there are new tactics, there are new ways of exploring it. So I want a game with replayability high on that level. What about qualifying markers? These are attributes that offer a little bit of a twist, offer something kind of unique on there. Legacy type games, and this is becoming a lot more popular, and I think if done correctly, really adds some massive value, where you are navigating and unlocking things, or the actions you take in a game, they permanently alter sometimes the rules, sometimes the missions. It's literally a living type of game world. The best analogy I could pull in would be from like a Dungeons and Dragons type game, where if you're playing in a campaign, you're playing in a story. If you decide to take certain courses of action, word gets around and the DM is forced to change the world, to modify the world. It brings in this living component. So games that can do the legacy and do it well, I think that's a factor to look at. There are some games that try to do the legacy thing that don't do it very well. So maybe it pulls away. The last two considerations, they're there. I won't say they're a major factor, but it might be, depending a little bit on your situation in building this checklist, campaign play. Pulling out the board game, a dungeon quest type example. If I pull out Descent, 2nd edition, and I love Descent 2nd edition, love 1st edition too, I could play it a single scenario, and I can have that experience. Or we can get together with the group and play through the entire campaign. Linked scenarios, choices to make, new options opening up, reputations to build. Obviously, games that can accommodate both of these play styles will have a heavier weight. And then finally, solo versus group play. And solo play could be controlling multiple characters. Solo play could be the AI is automated, where the overlord, the necromancer, the bad guy player is handled by the game mechanics as opposed to another player. I will define solo play as games that have a dedicated solo system. Perfect example. That doesn't mean you can't house rule stuff. Conan. I love the Conan IP. I love Conan the board game by Monolith. It is really, really sweet. It is really, really good. It's very well done. But you need an overlord to play it, someone to control the minions, the bosses, and run the adventure. That's just how it's designed. And the game system is so open and flexible to really take advantage of some of the things that you can do in there. You want an overlord. Can you house rule it? Can you automate it? Can you randomize it? There is a narrative out there to do that, where the overlord is played with set AI points to decide, hey, if Conan's right there and you have a minion, you're going to take a swing, whether you can really effectively hurt him or not. Likewise, roll a d6, and that's going to activate certain things on the book of Skelos, the AI panel on there. Yeah, it works, but it wasn't intended that way. So when I look at solo, and that's not to say I have a lot of titles that weren't designed to play solo, but they can be played solo. For this Matrix, it has to have solo mode. All right, that's the criteria. That's the checklist. And I'm taking all my titles, I'm looking through, I'm putting them together. My vote would be, and is, as of right now, of posting this podcast, Gloomhaven. Let me share with you why Gloomhaven hits all of these points, and why I think, I was going to say pound for pound, Gloomhaven, the box, first time you see it, you're like, that's a big box. You pick it up, you're like, whoa. I mean, we're on another planet where gravity is like 2 times that of Earth. It is heavy. It is massive on there. I believe it's the best value, and here's why. Going through my checklist. And if you agree with Gloomhaven, yes. Certainly if there's other games out there, absolutely. Gloomhaven right now is about $100 or so, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less USD. Retail, shipping has to be taken into account. Shipping might be a little bit more. I mean, if it's a flat rate, they're losing money on the game because this thing's like a brick on there. If you're ordering it outside of the US, I'm sure you have to take shipping into account from that perspective. But even with that, this is why I would say it's a great vote. Production quality is very, very good. The cardboard is thick. The cards and the art look great. The standees for the figures, both plastic for the characters and cardboard for the monsters, the artwork is great. The figures are good. It has this presence. You have the world map. You have little side quest maps. The backs of the cards aren't just kind of generic blank. They tie in. They look like map pieces. They look like shop pieces. You have it laid out on the table where you've got the world map, you've got the current scenario, you've got the item cards and things back in Gloomhaven. You look at that and you're like, okay, so I don't know what this game is, but something's going on. This looks pretty good. This is obviously some sort of adventure type game on there. Deduct a few points, personal bias, but I understand why. The fact that the enemies that you fight, and essentially Gloomhaven, it has many components. It is a dungeon crawling type game. You're going in, you're getting the loot, you're getting the experience, you're getting out. The standees are cardboard. The monsters are cardboard on there. Being a Wargamer Fritz, I tend to like miniatures more. I like the presentation of miniatures more. But the challenge, and in Gloomhaven, this is standalone. This isn't no expansions. Well, there's the small sub-box expansion. But in the core game, there are so many monsters. Compare it to Descent 2nd Edition. Yes, there's miniatures. But they have to, just for production costs, be limited. But you're limited with those miniatures. You want to get more monsters, you got to get more expansions. Gloomhaven, the base monsters are insane. The base monsters that you fight against, there's a lot there's a massive diversity of monsters in there. You're not going to be constantly fighting the same stuff over and over and over again. And that's before we get into the different base or elite and special abilities and scenarios. A lot of stuff to fight. So I understand just from that production standpoint, obviously a decision was made. Look, we could do miniatures for the monsters, but it's going to be a small group. Or we can really go massive, go big, and do the standees. Nothing wrong with them. They look great. But in my mind, it pulls it down a little bit. But I admit it would be massively impractical to have them all be base game miniatures. Replayability. So Gloomhaven wants to work as a campaign, meaning you build up your party, you play through it on there, and it unlocks things, and you have decisions to make, and you put little stickers for locations that you explore. We'll get into the legacy aspect in a moment. You could also play one-offs. You could also pick a place that's already been explored and dungeon delve into it. There's also a couple of side quests that kind of randomize things. This is a little bit unique because most games are built, here's standalone play, standalone scenario, and as an afterthought, and it might be a good afterthought, it's kind of like, you could play in a campaign too. You could do the campaign thing. Gloomhaven reverses it. The campaign experience is where it's at. This is both good and bad. And if it wasn't for the legacy aspects and the solo play, this would kind of knock things off a little bit. Gloomhaven, the adventures and content, hundreds and hundreds of them. I'm still playing through it, both solo and with a group pretty regularly. We're having a blast playing it. It's absolutely worth it. But I would ask myself the question, what's my gaming group like? Do I have it lined up where we can play this for a little bit and maybe shelve it, then maybe come back to it, maybe shelve it? Is it going to be something that I can get to the table with a group once a month? Or, and there's nothing wrong with this, are you primarily a solo player on there and you don't really play in a group? But where this gets my vote for Gloomhaven, campaign experiences are where it's at when done correctly. Gloomhaven does this right because it's combined with the legacy aspects. Literally, and I'm not going to give away any spoilers for this. I mean, a lot of Gloomhaven is much like Kingdom Death Monster. You got to figure it out. You got to discover it. I'm not going to take that away from you. You lay out the city map at the beginning of the game, and it's blank. And you've got these sticker sheets. And as you unlock stuff, as you solve stuff, as you explore stuff, real time, mission to mission, dungeon to dungeon, you're placing these stickers on there. It's evolving, and every decision unlocks different sets of stickers to place over locations. The world evolves. It's pretty cool. The last time I had that experience, or the only time I've had that experience, is Dungeons and Dragons. Playing through and exploring stuff and listening to rumors and making notes on my map and trying to figure out what's true or not. That's, there's a lot of time in Gloomhaven where you're looking and saying, well, what next? Where should I go next? What should I do next? There's a lot of really sweet playability in there when you're not actually playing the game. The other thing that's done really well, and this is where it gets my vote, the legacy aspect. Yes, cards are retired. Yes, cards are augmented. You're supposed to rip them up. You could put stickers over them. You could not do that and set them aside. But the fact that the game comes with characters hidden in a box with symbols. You're like, what's this? So you start the game with 1/3 of the characters unlocked. The other 2/3 are hidden away. You have to unlock and discover those character classes through questing, through leveling up characters and fulfilling personal missions on there. So there's like this triple threat of, okay, first we're exploring hundreds of missions. It's not like, hey, here's your 6 scenarios, go to town. Hundreds of missions with unique AI and a massive diverse host of monsters to fight and loot. Like, I'm sold on that right there. Sign me up. I'm ready to go. I don't even need to know anymore. But you have that. Then you have the fact that real time you are unlocking missions and places and following up on rumors. What are we going to do next? And then you have these character classes where you unlock them. and you discover them, and you actively have to do it. You have to actively play almost this mini game in the quests of what's my character's personal quest, and now that opens up more of a story. And then on top of all of that, if that's not crazy enough, then there's an actual overall background story, no spoilers, of what the heck is going on in Gloomhaven. So it's like games within games within games and layers. The fact that this was developed by one person, genius mode on, is absolutely insane. So for about $100, massive content, massive playability, massive replayability, massive exploration, just everything is like yes, 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 and yes. How does it play, though, solo? It plays solo flawlessly. You're going to control at a minimum of 2 characters. So you got a little bit of bookkeeping in there. Not a lot. You got some bookkeeping. You get used to it really, really quick. By bookkeeping, I mean, okay, if I play this character card here, then what's my other character going to do? You have a little bit of hidden knowledge because you can coordinate perfectly, but there are ways that the game accounts for that. You could do 2. It wants to do maybe 3 or 4 characters on there, but it is completely doable from that perspective because the AI handles everything else. And actually what I enjoy at this point, having a number of scenarios unlocked, I play with the group. I also play solo. We've also had people just, and part of our campaign play, when we get together, because number one rule for me, board gaming, wargaming, role-play gaming, I got everything set up. You want to sit down at my table and play? You've got a spot. Let's do it. You've never played before? No problem. Sit down. It's only once, and you can only play for an hour. Have a seat. Let's do this. Let's roll some dice, or in the case of Gloomhaven, let's flip some cards. The system is so well designed that you could have someone pop in, like literally if you're like, all right, we're going to play Gloomhaven for like 6 hours. And someone walks up, your buddy walks up and is like, what are you playing? Here, play a character. They can do that. They can go in there. They can get the experience, and it doesn't bog down the game, and it doesn't take away from the campaign, or it doesn't send things out of balance where now you have another player who's then later going to drop off. Everything about it is really just very, very tight and well designed and well played. This is turning into a kind of a Gloomhaven review. It wasn't. I just wanted to get my vote based out on those criteria. I'm going to push it out to you guys now. Number 1 vote, sort of utilizing that checklist, because I'm always up for recommendations. I'm always up for new titles. And it works out really well because when you guys have some great suggestions of like a game to purchase next or where to go, it's great because I have complete deniability from Mrs. Fritz. I just blame it all on you guys. I'm like, YouTube said I got to buy in and play this game. YouTube said this is great on there. So I appreciate the deniability that I don't have to take responsibility for your suggestions. They're amazing. Keep them coming. Your vote right now in production, best board game value.